So first of all, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Chad Horenfeldt. I'm the VP of Customer Success at Sienna AI. Sienna AI is an operating system for CX organizations in the e-commerce space. But we're obviously not going to talk about Sienna today. We have something that's more important to talk about. We're going to talk about you, or maybe people on your team, or maybe a role that you want to move into. And this is the customer success manager role. You can see there, I'm holding the book. I just about have the physical version of it. I have everything already. I'm just going to be submitting it to and getting it published through Amazon in the next few days. And that is my dog, Timbit. Timbit is a little poodle mix, and he's named Timbit because if you're from Canada, where I'm from originally, you would know what a Timbit is. It's like the little Duncan Munchie. And he is not that size. He's a little smaller than that. So, all right, well, let's jump in. So I think that many people can relate to this, and either you feel that maybe you are a strategic CSM, or maybe your manager said to you, it's like, hey, I don't think you're being strategic. And usually in the cases of more in the latter, it can be really frustrating because we just don't know really what that means. You're not really necessarily given any concrete steps or feedback that will tell you, like, hey, like, how do I be more strategic? Like, how do I really help ascend and improve how I operate both with customers and internally? And that's really what I wanted to get to. I wanted to really help people transform into someone who's more reactive, into someone that's more proactive and a strategic advisor. And so hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you'll get a few takeaways that you can learn and take away and leverage and learn more about kind of what this idea of being strategic is, and perhaps like why you're not strategic today. So jumping in, like, here are some identity traps that might be holding you back. And so there's a few of them on here that you could probably find yourself emulating or associating with. I know for the first one, the firefighter, I actually went into firefighting mode yesterday. I will not disclose why that was the fact, but I did, and I had to jump right in and understand an issue. The key thing here is, like, you don't want to be in firefighting mode the majority of your time. If you do that, then you will you can't take a step back and really address the larger and more important items with your customers. And so hopefully, you have a support team. And if you don't, I mean, this is something, to discuss with your manager, but really, if you're firefighting mode all the time, you have that hose out all the time, that helmet on, you're not going to necessarily be strategic. You're just too much in the weeds. Similarly, being a waiter, where a customer will say, hey, well, I'd love to build this feature, and you're like, sure, like, what else would you like? And the typical waiter mentality is like, the customer is always right. But if we take that mentality, it's similarly in terms of the firefighter in some ways, but it's you can't be nice all the time. You have to jump in and say, okay, well, you want that feature. Well, why do you want that feature? How is that going to help you? How is it going to achieve your ultimate goal, which is essentially your outcome that you're trying to get to? And really questioning the customer and getting the details and trying to understand what's actually blocking them. And at the end of the day, it's not about being nice. It's really about driving value. And that gets into the entertainer. At times, we jump on calls with our customers, and it's great. Like, you're almost like their psychologist. You're listening to all their problems at work. Maybe they hate their boss. They have problems at home. I'm sure people have heard it all. And you're not there to make your customers happy. You're not there to listen to all their problems. Again, you're there to make sure they're getting value. Because at the end of the day, if you're not, then they'll leave. It's just, unfortunately, the sad reality. And then the last one, which is a little hard, because you're straddling the line, and a lot of these you're straddling the line too, right? Like, you're building that relationship with your customer, getting trust. And the fixer is one where you might be solving a problem, right? You're jumping in, you're operating within your product, whatever it is, you're fixing their problem. And the challenge with this is that if you're too hands-on and you're spending too much time trying to fix the problem, you're not actually understanding what the real problem is and what the larger picture is that you should be looking at, because you're too far down here. And so in this case, you might need to get in and help fix a problem, but you need to almost take a timeout at sometimes and say, wait a minute, is there someone else that should be doing this? Maybe a services or a partner? But really, like, why can't the customer be doing this, and sort of what's the challenge there? How can I better empower them? Because at the end of the day, having some sort of way for them to be doing it is going to be best in the long run. I think, we all know, though, of course, that at times you need to jump in and help your customer and be that fixer. But it's just a matter of, if you do too many of these roles at once, it's going to take you away from being strategic. So what do we actually mean by being strategic? And so this is a really key area, and it's something that, again, it's a bit of a nebulous topic. People don't necessarily fully understand it. And so I took the definition of Richard Rumelt, who's, I'd say, an authority on the subject, wrote a really good book on it. And the way that he calls, defining strategy is, it's a good strategy is a set of actions that is credible, coherent, and focused on overcoming the biggest hurdle or hurdles in achieving a particular objective. And I think that this relates extremely well to customer success and what customer success managers do. So we break this down. The first thing is identifying the biggest hurdles. These are really overcoming your customers' critical challenges and underlying issues. And for the most part, this is why they bought your product. Whether they're trying to execute marketing campaigns, whether they're trying to secure a piece of their architecture or infrastructure, whatever that is, they had some sort of challenge and they need a particular solution to achieve that. And so it's really important to understand what that is, and also understanding how it fits into their business. And this gets into the next point, is focusing on their business outcomes. And this is, achieving a particular objective. So by understanding their outcomes, you're understanding what are those high-level business objectives that they're trying to achieve. And usually that means something like, making money. It could be saving money. It could be improving an employee satisfaction survey, or employee retention. There's many kind of high-level metrics that you need to be aware of. And in the book, I get into much more the specifics in terms of what business outcomes are, what they compose of, and how to actually extract those, because it isn't the easiest thing. But I would say that the hardest thing is that there's too much information out there for CSMs. It's like, well, get business outcomes, and really no definition around what those business outcomes actually are. So again, at a very high level, it's the actual objective overall. The big objective is getting more money or saving money, or some sort of key metric internally that you're trying to achieve. It could be marketing qualified leads, whatever that is. Then you have a specific metric that is a time-bound metric. So for example, increasing revenue by 10% in Q3. So it's something that's very specific that you're measuring against. And the last part of it is very specific goals that will help you achieve those particular business outcomes. And there could be 2 or 3. It could be just turning on your software, activating your product. That could be one of them. And a second thing could be leveraging a particular module and maybe getting to 50% automation rate. That's something that, in Sienna, that's something that we focus on. So it's kind of those smaller metrics that will achieve the higher value metric. And then the last part of it is creating an actual plan to get there. If you have a success plan usually maybe encompasses the business outcomes and those goals to get to that particular business outcome, but it doesn't necessarily have a project plan, an actual task, multiple tasks. Some do, but usually there's maybe a larger action plan that's involved. And you just want to make sure that you have clear actions with clear owners and clear dates associated to them. So let's say, for example, you're trying to increase revenue by 30% in Q3. You would need to, let's say, activate a certain feature and achieve a certain automation rate by a certain date. And so you put those particular actions in your plan. And so then this is all part of being more strategic, defining it, and then executing on it. And of course, to execute on it is not the easiest, but first of all, it's just understanding from a basic perspective what we mean by being strategic. And another high-level view of this, and I think it's important, is these 3 items here in terms of a typical CSM versus a strategic CSM. So typical CSM, they are an expert in the product. And let me say this, you have to be an expert in the product. It's extremely important. And again, like most people that I work with and the products I work within are SaaS products, but it can apply to really to any type of products that you work within. You really need to know them and be an expert in them. However, that is not enough. What is more important in some ways is understanding their business so that you can apply what you understand about their product to their business to help them achieve value and what they're looking for. I think that, as an example, and this kind of gets to the next one, is around driving adoption. A lot of times we focus on driving adoption, but really what we need to be doing is focusing on achieving the business outcomes. So a good example of this, and I've been guilty of this in my past, because you're getting conflicting messages internally. As an example, you might get a message, oh, we just launched this new feature. Make sure your customers are all using this feature. And so then you get on a call to your customer and you're like, guess what? And they're like, what? They're like, oh, I've got this great new feature. You have to see this new feature. And you show them the new feature and they're like, oh, that's really cool. That's really neat. And then nothing happens. And the reason why typically nothing happens is that you didn't necessarily apply why that product is so great to their business needs and what they're actually trying to accomplish to achieve their goals. And so it might look really cool and it does some sort of flashy thing or looks to provide them some really good information. But if you understand their business more, then you can take the information that's there and make it much more relevant for them. Some products, they do it automatically. It's more apparent than others, but that's part of why we're here. It's not just creating value, it's selling the value and making sure our customers understand that. And then the last part of this, and I don't know if it's controversial, but it's something that I definitely fell down on in my kind of younger days, where I sort of felt where I just needed to be customer centric. I needed everybody to do whatever was needed to help me be really great with my customers, help my customers, but pretty much I could be kind of left alone. I could help the customers build out whatever solutions, and I would be great, and just everyone get out of my way. And it's a really poor way to approach things. Because at the end of the day, you need other functions to help you be successful. You need engineering to fix bugs. You need product to build new features. You need sales to potentially help you in terms of building relationships with customers and potentially picking up and partnering on certain upsells, as an example. And the typical approach I see sometimes is that there's a very adversarial approach between one department and another. Let's say product doesn't build a feature and you tell the customer, oh, it's like, oh man, product, they let us down again. And that's really, I'd say, the wrong approach. Every organization is going to have issues. Sales will oversell at times. Engineering will introduce bugs. It's just, it's like death and taxes. It's always going to be there, unfortunately. And what you need to do as a strategic CSM is gather the data and bring it forward and try and help the situation. You need to meet with other teams and try to forge those relationships and build those relationships because it's really what's going to help you grow in your career in terms of building those relationships. You might find that there's a function that you want to move into later based on the knowledge that you have. But more importantly, if you're looking to ascend in your career, typically it's not just your manager who's going to decide about that promotion. It's typically another business function. They're going to look at who's up for a promotion, and they're going to say, oh yeah, I like that person. That person's been really, really helpful. And I can see that they can really help the organization because they've been not just helping their own group, but they've been helping other groups as well. So that cross-functional mindset is really, really important as well. All right, so let's get into some really tactical items in our time here. I want to make sure that you come away with a couple of things. So we're going to talk about the 3 C's, and we're going to talk about the OARS framework, and we're going to get into a little bit of research using Claude as part of this. We talked a little bit about cross-functional alignment. We're not going to have necessarily time to go through that. All right, so let me jump in. All right, so the 3C framework is a really cool framework that you can use as part of your call preparation. Let's say you're taking on a new customer. As you're going into that, potentially you're meeting with a customer in a meeting. Number one thing I'd say as a tip to go into a customer meeting is always think about what's the outcome that you want from that particular meeting. And so what I mean by that is, what's some information that you want to gather from the customer, or what's something that you want the customer to be doing at the end of the call. So it could be, for example, information you want to extract would be, What are some numbers that are going to help us to frame up the renewal, for next year? It could be that, for example, they're going to be growing in a certain way, and so that's going to help you impact the renewal. It could be, just understanding what their renewal intentions are. And in terms of an action, like maybe you're just trying to get them to use a new feature. Maybe you're trying to get them to take a training course. Whatever it is, have that idea in your head of what it is that you want to achieve from the particular meeting, instead of kind of going into the meeting and just having a bunch of agenda items and hoping for the best. Because, listen, most likely it'll be a good meeting, but if you have that intention, it's like, okay, I'm not going to leave the meeting unless I get this from the customer. It can be a much more impactful meeting, and you will look to achieve specific things and get things out of that particular meeting. Now, the 3 C's are really important as you start to take on, let's say, a new customer, or you're joining a customer meeting, or maybe you're meeting with a decision maker. This gets you in the right frame of mind when you go into those particular meetings, or just take on the customer. So the first one is understanding the company. And so what I mean by that is just kind of diving a little bit deeper, like, what products do they sell? What industry are they in? So just understanding the company at a little bit more at a deeper level. From a customer perspective, you want to understand who are the customers that your customer sells to. Remember, like, they don't necessarily care about you. I mean, they might like you, they might like working with you, but they actually care about their end customer. That's why they're in business. That's what they're trying to either build something or provide something. And so you want to know, like, who those people are. Are they, I work with, like, for example, Spanx. So we know, who's buying from Spanx. We know their customers. We know their terminology. We even know, like, kind of how they call their customers. Like, they might refer to them as her, or they might refer to them as patients. Know the terminology that your customers use and try and emulate that, because that will kind of make you more of an extension of their team. And then the last one is the challenges. And I'm not talking about the challenges they have with your product. I'm talking about the challenges in their business. So the challenges in their business could be they want to raise funding, or let's say they have to unfortunately lay off people, or there might be just new things, like they're launching a new product line. These various things will be really impactful in terms of your conversation overall with the customer. And if you notice, I didn't talk about the product at all. This is really just understanding their business as a starting point, because that's going to put you, again, in the right frame of mind to have a more high-level conversation with the client. Now, with that, what I want to do quickly is share just another page here, because I want to actually jump into, so let me just share here. Here it is. Okay. I'm going to share a query that I've done here in Claude, where, and this is one of our clients, and I wrote here, I'm meeting with the Lofty founder, Matt. Tell me about their business. What do they sell? What do they do? What are their current challenges they're facing? Anything else I should know about the company? So I'm going to run that, and very simply, it's going to give me some really good results. And let's see if I may have run this already. Yes, okay. All right, so I've run this already, and here's the results. So it tells me about the company, about Lofty. It tells me who Matt, the founder, is, where he even graduated from, so I know where he lives. It tells me the products that they sell, the Lofty clock. You might be a Lofty customer. It's a kind of this high-end, really cool clock that kind of wakes you up based on, you think you're sleeping, I don't know, whatever that sleeping thing is. I don't necessarily know, because I sleep pretty well. They have memberships. It shows you who their target customers are, the demographics, and then it gets into their challenges. And one of their immediate challenges, unfortunately, is the tariffs that have been put in place because they sell their products in China. And so this is super helpful, because I'm going to know what's going on in their business, and I can bring that up as part of my call. So again, like, this is something that you can be doing right away to better prepare for your customer calls. It gets into their strengths and their opportunities. It even gives me key talking points. So that's something else. Like, it tells me strategic questions that I can ask. So this is a perfect way that I could even frame up an email to my decision maker, and have a much better conversation with them. Now, the other thing I did is I asked a secondary question, and I said here, I'm a CM at Ciena. I've been here for over a year, and I help Lofty be successful with our product. How could I have improved this prompt? And so then it's really just a great kind of AI technique is you put in a prompt and you get some information back, but you can always ask, how can I improve this particular prompt? And what I love is it rewrote the prompt, and it says, what would have been a better prompt is writing, I'm a CSM at Ciena AI, working with Lofty for over a year. I have an upcoming meeting with founder Matt Hassett to discuss a specific purpose. So going back to that, what I said, like, what's the outcome you want to get from a particular meeting? I already know these three things. So maybe they have either achieved a business outcome, or maybe they have a particular problem with your product, or there's a feature they want, or maybe something's going on in their business and they've called you to talk about a particular item. But I need current intelligence on a specific area to help me achieve a particular objective. So this is just a great way of creating a much better prompt, getting more information, and then better preparing yourself for the meeting. But specifically on this 3CM framework that you can use. So hopefully you can use that. Again, I'm going to provide this to you. You'll have this, so don't worry in terms of not getting this information. So back to our slides as we kind of keep moving here. But again, this is just a good example of showing you kind of what you can do using this type of technology. So there we go. So these are just the prompts that I used, and kind of telling me how I can improve my prompt. All right, so the last thing I want to cover before we wrap up and give you guys a chance for some questions is this OARS framework. And once you get on the call, one of the things that I struggled with is, how do I make sure that I'm asking the questions in the right way and I'm really showing that I'm listening? And so this is a framework that is actually a psychological framework, part of something called motivational interviewing. And there's 4 parts to it. There's open questions, affirmations, reflective listening, and summaries. And I think we're really familiar with open questions, and I'll kind of come back to that. But affirmations is really just kind of giving your customer like a way to go, and just encouraging them. For example, you might check in and look at their data, and they're well on their way to achieving a particular business outcome based on a metric that you've jointly set together, and just letting them know, and maybe letting their boss know. It's like, hey, like this, we've really done really well here, and just encouraging them. Even small things like just configuring a new feature, that could be very beneficial to keep them going. I'd say out of all of these, the most important one is the reflective listening. So if your customer tells you something like, no, Chad, I've been really having problems, like, with your particular product in this area, you keep having bugs here, and whenever I try and get help, I can't necessarily get help, and with a reasonable amount of time. And so instead of the typical CSM saying, yeah, I get it, like, yeah, that's not great, the better way to approach this is to reflect back what they're saying to you. And so you could reflect back and say, well, what I hear you saying is, you're really trying to use our product, but you keep having these issues, and it's really frustrating. And then when you try to reach out for support, you're not getting the support that you need. I just want to make sure if I got that right. And most likely they'll say yes. And it's just a really good technique. You don't want to use it all the time, but it's a good way to show that you really care and that you want to get to a resolution. Summaries is just summarizing up kind of like a summation at the end. And all of these together can help you have better conversations. And then the other thing that I talk about in the book in terms of these open questions, and something that Bob London says, I love kind of his approach to this as well. He says the answer is actually the question. And what he means by that, I would say, is if you ask better questions, you'll get better answers. And the typical CSMs, they typically start with something like, well, what are your goals? Or, the sales one, like, what keeps you up at night? And, in the book, I kind of highlight some of his disruptive questions which have a bite to them, right? This is kind of going away from that nice CSM where we're just trying to like kind of nudge you along. It's like asking a really difficult question, like, hey, from 1 to 10, if a customer calls you up, with 10 being, for sure you would take a call, how likely are you going to take that call from that competitor? And the key to this is not just asking the question, it's the follow-up question. So we get into more of these questions in the book, but this is really the difference between being that nice person that's trying to be friendly and nudge the person along to really coming in and saying, all right, what is it you want to get to? All right, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to achieve that. And then following up with really biting questions that will, again, question what they're doing and really what they want to get to. And what I love about these is that when I've worked with CSM teams that use this, they always come away with, oh my God, I didn't know that about the customer. I've been working with them for 6 months. And that's, again, part of being the strategic CSM. So, it's a bit of a ladder. You focus on the customer over your product and learning about their business. You master strategic conversations. You uncover business outcomes, and you drive cross-functional alignment within your organization. It's part of this transformation that we get to.